Hello, friends. Today I am your storyteller. I hope you will enjoy this story. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so that we can receive your love and support. Now let's begin the story. I never thought flipping burgers and working a register would leave me with a memory that still makes my chest tighten every time I hear footsteps behind me in a parking lot. But that's how life works sometimes. What you expect to be routine ends up changing the way you see the world forever. My name is Rachel Carter, and when I was 17, I got my very first job at a Burger King in Maplewood, Indiana, a small suburban town about 40 minutes outside Indianapolis. Back then, my world was painfully ordinary. I lived with my parents and my little sister Emily in a two-story brick house at the end of a cul-de-sac. My dad was an electrician, my mom a school secretary. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. I was the typical middle-class kid, AP classes, cheer squad, homecoming dances, Friday night games. The only reason I applied to Burger King in the first place was because I wanted my own money. My parents covered the basics, clothes, food, gas, but I wanted freedom, concert tickets, a car upgrade fund, even just late night Taco Bell runs with friends without having to beg for $20 from my dad. So one September afternoon, I walked into the Burger King on Jefferson Avenue, filled out an application, and within a week, I had the polyester uniform, a headset, and a spot on the schedule. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was simple. Take orders, clean tables, smile at people who barely looked at you. The smell of fry oil clung to everything, your clothes, your hair, even your skin. But I got used to it. Most of my shifts were the usual blur of screaming kids, impatient adults, and fry burns. But there was one Saturday in late February that shattered my sense of safety. It was snowing that morning, light flakes drifting down, melting the second they hit the wet pavement. I remember brushing frost off my windshield before driving to my shift. It was an 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. block, which meant I'd be slammed for lunch rush. The store sat in a weird spot, wedged between an abandoned mattress store and a half-empty strip mall. It wasn't unsafe, just forgotten. The kind of place people drove past without noticing. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed, the soda machine hissed, and the smell of grilled patties filled the air. By noon, the dining room was packed. Families with kids in puffy coats, teenagers on lunch break, old couples splitting fries. I was in my usual rhythm: smile, ring up, ask about combos. That's when he walked in. He looked so normal that at first he barely registered in my brain. Average height, early 40s maybe, short brown hair, a little thinning at the temples. He wore a dark green hoodie, jeans faded at the knees, tan work boots leaving wet prints across the tile. He looked like a contractor, maybe someone who spent weekends fixing up his garage. He approached my register with a small smile. "Hey," he said, voice low but friendly. "Hi there, what can I get for you?" I asked, clicking the screen. "Whopper combo, large." "Coke," I rang it in, gave him the total. He handed me a 20, his hand brushing mine a little too long. "You've got a nice smile," he said. I laughed politely. "Thanks. Bet you hear that a lot." His eyes lingered on mine. I shifted my weight, uncomfortable but trying not to show it. "Not really." "Here's your change. Have a good one." He smiled again, slower this time, and moved to a booth in the far corner, the one under the flickering light bulb we never got around to fixing. For the next 20 minutes, every time I glanced up, he was watching. Not a full-on stare, but his eyes always seemed to land on me. My stomach twisted. Still, customers were always weird. I brushed it off. When he finished, he did something most customers didn't. He brought his tray back to the counter. "Take care, Rachel," he said. My breath caught. "How do you know my name?" He pointed at my name tag, grinning. "Oh, right. Have a good day." And just like that, he was gone. By the time I clocked out at 5:07 p.m., the snow had turned to slush. I tossed my hoodie over my uniform and drove the 10 minutes home, pulling into the familiar cul-de-sac. My parents' cars weren't in the driveway. They'd taken Emily to see a movie. I didn't think much of it. I was just glad to have the house to myself. I microwaved leftover spaghetti, curled up on the couch, and scrolled through TikTok with the sound low. The house was quiet, just the hum of the heater, and the occasional creak of the walls. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the front door. I froze. It wasn't late, but it was dark, and no one ever came by unannounced. My heart thudded as I crept to the window and pulled the curtain just an inch. It was him, the man from Burger King. Same green hoodie, same jeans, same boots. My chest went cold. Story 2. I was 21 when it all happened, broke, cold, and running on little more than the stubborn pride and caffeine. My name's Ethan Morales, and back in 2014, I lived in a city called Mill Haven, Pennsylvania. Not the kind of city you see on postcards or TV shows. Mill Haven was old steel town decay, brick factories rotting from the inside out, boarded windows, potholes deep enough to swallow a tire, and an endless cycle of businesses opening and dying like mayflies. If you stayed too long in Mill Haven, you either left bitter, broke, or buried. I didn't want to be any of the three, but at 21, options were limited. I was enrolled in a trade school for HVAC, scraping by with secondhand textbooks, working odd jobs to pay for tuition and rent. My folks lived 2 states away and couldn't float me a dime. Loans scared me. I'd seen too many guys my age chained to debt before they even started living. So I hustled, painting fences, shoveling snow, hauling garbage out of basements, whatever paid cash under the table. Then my cousin Lou came through. He hooked me up with a spot on a demolition crew through one of his union contacts. Mill Haven was tearing down a cluster of condemned properties near downtown. An old insurance building, a drugstore, a strip of dead restaurants. The pay wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and in February, steady meant survival. The first day I showed up, the foreman, a wide-shouldered guy named Rick Connors, looked me up and down like I was already a liability. "You worked demolition before?" he asked, chewing something that smelled like wintergreen. "Little bit," I lied. "You follow orders?" "Yes, sir." "Then don't end up like Wes. That's the last dumbass I need." I didn't know who Wes was until one of the older crew guys told me during lunch. Wes had slipped off a roof 2 weeks back. Black ice, no harness, broken collarbones, and a shattered ankle. Out for months, maybe longer. "Should have been smarter," the guy said, shaking his head. "Rick's right about that." My first official day was February 18th, 2014. I remember because the cold was biblical that morning, sharp enough to sting your lungs. The wind knifed through my canvas coat like it wasn't even there. The sky was the color of dirty dishwater. Mill Haven looked dead, and the silence between the crumbling buildings made it feel like I'd wandered into a graveyard. The crew wasn't bad. Older guys, mostly quiet, a couple young ones like me who didn't feel like talking. The job itself was brutal. Sledgehammers, crowbars, hauling debris into chutes, feeding dumpsters until our arms ached. Dust clung to my lungs, and the reek of wet concrete and old lead paint stayed in my clothes long after I got home. Rick had us working 12 to 14 hours to make up for delays. A blizzard had shut the site down for 3 straight days before I arrived, and management wanted everything back on track. By the time he let us go that night, it was close to midnight. Snow came down heavy, swirling under the yellow headlights of the diesel generator like ashes from a funeral pyre. Most of the guys carpooled or peeled out fast. I didn't have a car, just a bus pass and boots. My stomach was hollow, gnawing at itself after a day of physical labor. I stood at the curb, breath fogging in the air, and scanned the block. Across the slush-coated street, neon glowed faintly. A Burger King. The sign was weather-worn, colors faded to rust and pink, but the red, open neon flickered in the front window. It stood alone between a boarded-up nail salon and a tax prep office that looked equally abandoned. I muttered to myself, "Better than starving," and trudged across the icy street. The glass door stuck when I pulled it, hinges stiff, but it gave after a shove. A warm gust of fryer grease and something metallic, like pennies left out in the rain, hit me. The inside was dim, lit only by the amber glow of the heat lamps above the counter. The booths were coated in a thin film of dust. No music, no chatter, just the faint hum of equipment in the back. Behind the counter stood a kid about my age, pale skin, stringy brown hair, acne scars across his cheeks. His name tag read, Trevor. I cleared my throat. You guys open? He nodded once, jerky, puppet-like. Gas works, fryers work. What do you want? His voice was flat, like he was reading off a page. Whopper meal, no pickles, large fries. Coke. He blinked slow, like his brain lagged a beat behind. Okay. I pulled my wallet, but he waved it off. Registers down, on the house. That should have raised alarms, but hunger bulldozed common sense. Thanks, I muttered, stepping aside. Trevor disappeared into the back. I heard the hiss of a fryer basket plunging into hot oil. Then faintly, another voice. Deep, guttural. A sound that didn't belong in a fast food kitchen. I leaned, trying to see past the counter. Just shadows. Something tall shifted near the freezer, hunched, arms hanging too long. A pale hand, fingers twisted and root-like, passed Trevor a grease-stained bag. Trevor returned, face blank as ever, and set it on the counter. Here you go. The bag was warm in my hand, grease bleeding through the paper. The Coke was ice cold. My stomach growled in protest of waiting, so I sat at the nearest booth. The table was sticky, reddish-brown residue clinging to its edge. I wiped it with a napkin and didn't think twice. The fries were hot, crisp perfect. The burger, juicy, smoky, better than any Whopper I'd ever eaten. I devoured it, barely breathing between bites. When I looked back at the counter, Trevor was gone. The snow outside had worsened. You couldn't see the demo site across the street anymore. I bundled up, tossed the trash, and trudged to the bus stop. 3 people were already waiting. A nurse in scrubs, an old woman in pearls and a parka, and a little kid so bundled up he looked like a stuffed toy. They all glanced at me, then looked away too quickly. When the bus arrived, we filed in. I sat halfway back. The lights overhead buzzed and the air smelled faintly of antifreeze. No one spoke, but everyone kept sneaking glances at me. Quick, nervous looks. The old lady hugged her purse tighter. The kids scooted farther down the bench. Even the driver checked me twice in the rear view. At first, I thought it was sweat stink from the job. 14 hours of demo will do that. But when I got home, peeling off my jacket, I froze. My undershirt was stained red. Thick, dark. My reflection in the bathroom mirror stopped me dead. Blood coated my mouth, dripping down my chin, crusted into my collar. But my teeth, clean. My gums, uncut. No busted lips, no raw tongue, no pain, nothing. Just blood. I scrubbed until my skin stung, until the water ran pink down the drain. Told myself it was ketchup. Or maybe a nosebleed I hadn't noticed. Exhaustion played tricks on people, right? The next morning, the Burger King was boarded up. Neon dark. Snow undisturbed in the lot. A yellow chain strung across the drive-thru. Charlie, one of the crew, caught me staring during break. You looking at that place? Yeah, I said. I ate there last night. His face went still. You're shitting me. No. Why? He lowered his voice. That Burger King's been closed 2 years. Health department shut it down after a guy went missing. They found bones in the grease trap. I laughed nervously. Come on, that's a rumor. Charlie didn't laugh. No joke. It's next on our demo list. You'll see a week later, we started tearing it down. Inside, it looked nothing like the night I ate there. Dust coated every booth. Fryers rusted, filled with rat droppings. Bags of petrified buns chewed through. The smell of rot clung to everything. In the basement, we found freezers that hadn't worked in years. What was inside? Not beef. Not anything I could describe without gagging. Hazmat sealed it off. Cops showed up, faces pale. Rick told us to shut our mouths. But I remembered Trevor's dead eyes, the long, pale hand, the growl, and the blood that wasn't ketchup. I haven't eaten fast food since. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a blocked number. A man said he worked for a commercial security division, monitoring unusual incidents. Said they'd been watching the Millhaven demolitions. Said they needed someone with first-hand experience. I hung up. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that Burger King, about the warmth of the bag in my hands, about the taste of the meat, how good it was. Too good. And I wonder how many other places are out there, boarded up, condemned, forgotten, Places where the fryers still hiss, even when no living hand touches the switch. Places that come alive again when the snow falls, when the streets go quiet. Waiting. Story 3. I never thought something as simple as grabbing dinner would stick with me for the rest of my life. But that's how it usually works, right? You go about your day thinking nothing major is going to happen, and then out of nowhere, a single encounter flips your stomach inside out and leaves a mark you can't shake. It happened last summer, late June. Alabama heat. The kind that doesn't just sit on your skin, but seeps into your bones, leaving you sticky and tired no matter how much water you drink. I just finished an 8-hour shift at a small auto repair shop on the outskirts of Montrose, Alabama, about 40 minutes from Mobile. My name's Rachel Carter, and I was 25 then, still trying to piece my life together after a rough breakup and an even rougher year financially. I'd been living alone in a cramped second-floor apartment above a laundromat, scraping by paycheck to paycheck. Rent wasn't cheap, groceries kept going up, and most nights I skipped dinner just to make sure I had enough for gas. That day had been brutal. Oil changes, brake pads, customers screaming about prices like I set them myself. By the time I clocked out, I was drained, sweaty, and starving. On the drive home, I spotted the glowing red and yellow sign off Harrison Avenue, Burger King. I wasn't picky, fast food wasn't healthy, but it was affordable, and that night it was the only thing standing between me and collapsing into bed with an empty stomach. I figured I'd grab a Whopper meal, head home, and eat with the window unit blasting cold air. I pulled into the lot around 7:45 p.m. The sun hadn't set yet, but the sky was streaked with orange. The lot was busy but not overflowing, maybe 15 cars. The building itself looked a little worn down, neon flickering on one side of the sign, but the smell of fries wafting through the air was enough to lure me in. Inside, it was the usual chaos. Families with loud kids, a group of teenagers laughing too loudly near the soda machine, two guys in dirty uniforms, clearly just off construction. The air conditioner was working, but barely. A warm, greasy heaviness clung to the room. I stepped in line behind a woman juggling a toddler on her hip. The cashier, a thin teenage boy with nervous eyes, was trying to keep up with orders. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His name tag read, Derek. "Welcome to Burger King," he muttered. "What can I get you?" When it was my turn, I gave him a small smile. "Just a Whopper meal with a Coke. No onions, please." He nodded, punched it in. "That'll be $8.47. I slid my card, the machine beeped, and the receipt printed. I stepped aside to wait. My stomach growled as I watched bags get handed out one after another. Finally, 5 minutes later, Derek called out, "Order 192. I walked up, and instead of Derek, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a thick beard was waiting at the counter. His name tag read Caleb. He didn't smile, didn't even look like he wanted to be there. He just shoved the bag toward me. "Thanks," I said softly, taking it. I wasn't sure if he heard me over the noise, but I thought I'd done my part. I turned toward the exit when I noticed my shoelace flopping loose. Great. I didn't want to trip outside, so I stopped at a small empty table by the door, set my bag down, and crouched to tie it. When I stood up, Caleb was there, right in front of me. "You didn't say thank you." His voice was sharp, cutting through the noise around us. I blinked. "Oh, I did. I thought I did, but if not, then thank you." His eyes narrowed, jaw tightening. "No, you didn't. Don't lie," I froze, awkward smile tugging at my lips. "I'm not lying, but either way, I appreciate it. Sorry if it came off rude." Too late. His tone was venomous now. Before I could react, he snatched the bag off the table. In one swift motion, he walked to the trash can and slammed it inside. I stared, stunned. "What the hell? I paid for that. Maybe next time you'll show some respect," he snapped, voice loud enough that people at nearby tables turned to look. Heat rose in my face. Anger, embarrassment, confusion all tangled together. "Are you serious right now? I literally said thank you." "Don't talk back to me," Caleb barked. "You're done here." I stepped toward the counter, trying to keep calm. "Excuse me," I said to Derek, who looked terrified. "One of your co-workers just threw away my food." Before he could respond, a middle-aged woman in a visor approached. "What's going on?" she asked quickly. Your guy just threw away my meal because he thinks I didn't say thank you, I explained, pointing at the trash. Her expression flickered. Confusion, then resignation. She sighed. Was it Caleb? Tall? Beard? She nodded, rubbing her forehead. Yeah, look, I'm sorry. He has issues. This isn't the first time. So, can I get my food remade? Please? She nodded. Of course. I'll take care of it. But before she could even touch the register, Caleb stormed back out from behind the fryers, voice booming. What do you think you're doing? She's just getting her order remade, Caleb, the woman said firmly. No, she's not. I told her to leave. She's banned. My chest tightened. Banned? For what? I didn't do anything. You disrespected me. His face was red now, eyes wild. You don't get to eat here. The woman looked helpless. Derek stared at the counter. I raised both hands, trying to defuse it. Look, I don't want trouble. Forget the food, I'll just go. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, heart pounding. I made it halfway to my car when I heard the door slam open behind me. Hey! Caleb's voice boomed across the lot. I turned, stomach dropping. He was following me. You got something to say? Say it to my face. I already did, I said firmly, though my voice shook. I said I was sorry. You think you can come in here and disrespect me? He kept walking, closing the distance. I unlocked my car, backing toward it. You need to stop. You're harassing me. I'll do more than that if you keep running your mouth, he growled, fists clenched. My hands trembled as I yanked the car door open. If you come any closer, I'm calling the cops. He flipped me off with both hands, spitting on the pavement. You're lucky I'm at work. I slammed the door, locked it, and started the engine. He stood there glaring as I backed out and sped away. That night, I filed a complaint with Burger King corporate. Weeks later, I got a generic email. We're looking into the matter. No follow-up, no resolution. I never went back to that location. Hell, I haven't eaten at Burger King since. Every time I drive past one, my chest tightens, remembering the way his eyes burned into me. It wasn't paranormal. No ghosts, no demons. Just a man with too much anger, too much entitlement, and access to the public. And that, to me, was scarier than anything supernatural. Because sometimes the real monsters are just people in uniforms, hiding behind a counter, waiting for the smallest excuse to explode. Story 4. I was 15 when it happened. Just a sophomore at Ashwood High School in Mapleton, Indiana, a small town that barely makes the map. The kind of place where half the storefronts are empty. The high school football field gets more attention than the entire downtown, and the Burger King off Highway 37 is the unofficial hangout spot for bored teenagers with nowhere else to go. Back then, my life was school, basketball, and trying to stay out of my parents' way. My dad worked third shift at a factory that made aluminum siding, so I barely saw him except for weekends. My mom was a nurse's aide at a long-term care home, always exhausted from double shifts. Home wasn't bad exactly. It was just heavy. Basketball gave me space, gave me structure. I played junior varsity, and while I wasn't the star, I worked my ass off. Practice was something I looked forward to because it kept me at school late, gave me an excuse not to rush home. Because the school only had one main gym and a tiny auxiliary gym, all the basketball teams, varsity boys, varsity girls, JV boys, JV girls, had to split practice times. Mondays and Wednesdays, JV got the early slot. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we got stuck with the late one, 7 to 9:30 p.m. That Thursday night in early March, we had the late slot. I remember the weather being sharp and cold, the kind of cold that stings your lungs when you breathe too deep. Practice itself was brutal. Coach was furious because we'd lost by 20 points earlier in the week, so he had us running suicides until our legs felt like jelly. By the time practice wrapped, I was drenched in sweat, jersey sticking to me like glue. When we ended early, around 8:50, I felt a wave of relief. My mom wasn't supposed to pick me up until 9:45 though, since she always left work right after her shift. That left me stuck at school, sitting in the lobby with no Wi-Fi and no working data on my phone. I had run out the week before. A couple teammates joked around in the hallway before their parents showed. "You walking home again, Jordan?" one of them asked. "Nah," I said, forcing a laugh. "Just waiting for my mom." Truth was, waiting in that empty school lobby made me feel trapped. Silent halls, flickering fluorescent lights, the hum of vending machines. It always felt ghostly when the building cleared out. That's when I thought of Burger King. It was just across the highway, maybe a 10-minute walk tops, and it had free Wi-Fi. If I went there, I could message my mom, maybe grab a soda with the $5 in my backpack. So I slung my gym bag over my shoulder and started walking. The parking lot outside was mostly empty, the stadium lights already turned off. My breath puffed in little clouds as I cut across the field, hopped the short fence, and made my way toward the glowing Burger King sign in the distance. Inside, the place was quiet, almost too quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed, half the bulbs flickering. The smell of grease and fryer oil clung to the air. I pushed open the glass door and heard the weak ding of the bell above it. "Hello," I said. A tired-looking cashier, girl, maybe mid-20s, stepped out from the back. "Yeah, what can I get you?" Just a cheeseburger and a Sprite," I said. She punched it in without looking at me, slid the tray over a few minutes later. I thanked her, grabbed my food, and headed for a booth near the window. That's when I saw him. He was sitting in the far corner, half in shadow. A man, alone. His hood was pulled up, sunglasses covering his eyes, even though it was night. He was tall, lanky, hunched forward with his elbows on the table, hands cupped against his face. At first I thought maybe he was asleep, or high, or just weird. I didn't stare. I sat down, connected to the Wi-Fi, and texted my mom. Me. Practice ended early. I'm at Burger King across the highway. Mom, on my way. Be there in 15. Relieved, I took a bite of my burger, scrolling highlights on my phone. For a minute, it felt normal, until I heard movement, the scrape of a chair. I glanced up. The man in the hoodie was standing. Taller than I thought, easily 6'2", maybe 6'3". Dirty jeans, long greasy hair sticking out from under the hood. He didn't move right away, just stood there facing me. Then without a word, he started walking toward my booth. My stomach dropped. Maybe he's going to the bathroom, I told myself. Maybe he's leaving. But he didn't pass me. He stopped at my booth and slid into the seat across from me. I froze, staring at him. His sunglasses made it impossible to tell where he was looking. He didn't speak. Just sat there, breathing slow and steady. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. How's it going? No response. My mom's coming soon, I added a little louder. She's picking me up here. Still nothing, just silence, heavy and suffocating. I picked up my phone, pretending to check messages. My thumb shook as I typed. Me. Hurry, Mom, please. I forced a smile. Well, nice talking to you. Have a good night, I stood, legs weak, and walked toward the door as calmly as I could manage. The bell dinged as I pushed it open. The cold night air slapped me in the face. I walked fast, heart racing. Then I made the mistake of looking back. He was coming out of Burger King, following me. At first I told myself it was coincidence. He just happened to be heading the same way. But every turn I made, he made. Every time I sped up, he sped up. He never closed the gap fully, always about 50 feet back. But he never stopped either. By the time I reached the school, panic was clawing at my chest. The front doors were locked. No janitors, no coaches. The building was pitch black. I circled the school, desperate, still locked, still empty. When I came around the back by the portable classrooms, I risked another glance. He was still there, still following. Same distance, same steady walk. I broke into a jog. My gym bag bounced against my shoulder. My shoes slapped the pavement. But no matter how fast I went, when I looked back, he was there, always 50 feet behind, never closer, never farther. Finally, I made it back around to the front. My lungs burned, legs screaming. That's when I saw headlights, my mom's car. Pulling into the Burger King lot across the street, relief exploded through me. I bolted, sprinting across the road, waving frantically. I yanked the car door open, dove inside, and slammed it shut. Go, Mom! Please, just go! Her eyes went wide. She didn't ask questions. She threw the car into drive and peeled out of the lot. As we pulled away, I looked out the back window. The man had reached the edge of the Burger King lot. He wasn't running. He wasn't even hurrying, just walking, calm, steady, watching. We drove off, his figure shrinking in the rearview mirror until he was swallowed by the night. I never saw him again, never heard anything in the news, never learned who he was or what he wanted. But to this day, I can still feel his presence, that silent invasion of space, those sunglasses hiding eyes I never saw. The way he followed without ever rushing, like he knew I couldn't escape him. Sometimes I dream about that booth in the corner, about him sliding into the seat across from me, silent as death. And every time I wake up shaking, because the truth is, I thought I was just grabbing a burger. I didn't know I was walking straight into a nightmare. Story 5, I never thought I'd end up back in fast food, not after what happened in Greenville 3 years ago. Back then, I was 19, broke, and dumb enough to think a paper hat and a polyester uniform would solve my problems. It didn't. That job chewed me up. Burnt hands from fryer grease, managers who treated us like replaceable parts, and customers who made you feel less than human. By the time I quit, I swore I'd never step foot behind another counter again. But life doesn't care about your promises. By the time I turned 22, things had fallen apart. My mom passed from a stroke she never saw coming. Bills piled up faster than my 2 part-time jobs could handle. Rent was late, my car battery died in the middle of a January ice storm, and the only thing in my fridge was a bottle of mustard and half a loaf of stale bread. So when the Help Wanted sign appeared in the window of a Burger King off Route 17 in Hollow Pines, Arkansas, I gave in. This time's different, I told myself. Just a paycheck. Temporary. My name's Elena Cruz, and this is the story of how I learned that some kings don't wear crowns made of gold. Some wear rubber faces, smell like rot, and never stop watching. The first night shift felt almost comforting, routine, safe. The manager, Daryl, was a wiry guy in his mid-40s who looked like he hadn't slept properly in years. He was jittery but decent, always smelled like fryer oil and cigarettes. He gave me the rundown. Night shift's easy, Elena. Place goes dead after 10:30. Clean the lobby, restock sauces, keep the fryers off unless someone rolls through. Don't fall asleep and you'll be fine. I nodded, grateful just to have work. By midnight, the storm outside was rattling the neon Burger King sign, making it flicker like a busted heartbeat. Hollow Pines was one of those places forgotten by time. 2 gas stations, a pawn shop, and this Burger King clinging to the edge of the highway like a bad memory. I thought I wanted silence, but silence can turn on you. It was around 12:15 a.m. when the glass doors hissed open, the entry bell dinged. A man walked in. At first glance, I thought it was some drunk playing a prank. He was dressed head to toe in a cheap king costume, a velvet robe stained dark at the hem, plastic boots, and a massive rubber mask molded into a smiling king's face, plastic crown fused on top. I forced a laugh. Late night costume party? The king tilted his head slowly. His voice came out deep, metallic, like it was bouncing inside a hollow barrel. I thought everybody forgot this place. Something about the way he said it, like a confession, like a memory, made the hair on my arms rise. I cleared my throat. Well, we're still open. What can I get you? He stepped closer, each boot hitting the tile with a heavy thud. Fries, double Whopper, large Coke, and he leaned close, the rubber grin inches from mine. Maybe the keys to your kingdom, peasant. I swallowed hard and typed his order into the register. The restroom's to your left, I muttered. He nodded solemnly like I just knighted him and vanished into the bathroom. 15 minutes later, the food was ready, but he hadn't come back. Hey, I called, knocking on the bathroom door. Order's up. The door creaked open. He stepped out. Something about him had changed. His eyes behind the mask were bloodshot, too wide. His lips, what I could see through the rubber slit, were raw, almost bleeding. A rotting smell followed him, thick and sour. He sat in the far corner booth, unwrapped the burger, and then pulled something from his robe. My stomach lurched. A bundle of bloody entrails. I staggered back. What the hell is that? He looked up, voice calm, almost polite. The king's special meal. Before I could react, he peeled the top bun off, stuffed the entrails inside, and ate loud, sloppy bites, grease and blood dripping down his chin. Every chew sounded like tearing fabric. I gagged, ran to the bathroom, and vomited into the sink. That's when I saw it, clumps of dried blood already stuck to the porcelain. He had washed them here. A loud bang outside. A car alarm screamed through the storm. I rushed out, heart hammering. A blue sedan had crashed into a tree at the edge of the lot. The driver's door hung open. The king was standing beside it, crown glistening wet under the rain. Inside the car, a woman slumped over the wheel, her face ruined. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. The king turned slowly toward me. His voice was low, almost tender. "I've never tasted human roadkill before." And then he leaned in and began licking the blood from her broken face. I screamed. My vision spun. I collapsed into the mud. When I woke, red and blue lights painted the night. An EMT crouched over me. "She's waking up. Elena, can you hear me?" I blinked hard. A cop leaned close. Officer Brennan Ramirez. "Ma'am, do you work here? Do you know who killed this woman?" My throat was raw. "Killed? No, she crashed. I saw it." Brennan's face hardened. "Then why is half her face missing?" I staggered up, stumbling toward the wreck. One look inside and I almost collapsed again. Her face wasn't just broken. It had been bitten. I told them everything. The costume, the entrails, the security cameras. They pulled the footage, and there he was, the king, walking in, ordering, eating, leaving. In the last frame, he turned to the camera and waved. They searched the woods behind the restaurant. All they found was the rubber mask. I still work sometimes, but never alone. Never at night, because I know he's out there, not waiting for roadkill anymore. And kings always come back for their crown. Story 6, I used to think the phrase, "starting over," meant something clean, like a fresh coat of paint on a wall. But when it actually happened to me, it wasn't clean at all. It was messy, humiliating, sticky with fryer grease and the smell of cheap ketchup packets. Before life flipped upside down, I was the girl people whispered about in the hallways. Envy tucked under fake smiles. Summers at Martha's Vineyard, winters in Aspen, weekends shopping on Fifth Avenue. My father, William Greer, was an investment banker in Manhattan. My mother didn't work, unless you call hosting charity luncheons and redesigning the kitchen every 18 months a career. I went to St. Helena's Academy, one of those prep schools where even the ivy on the walls looked expensive. Back then, I thought the world was something soft that bent around me. But then came 2008, the crash. I still remember standing outside my Econ 101 lecture at Bellamy College when my mother called, sobbing so hard her words blurred together. My father's firm had collapsed. No bailout, no parachute, no sympathy. Within months, our house in Greenwich was gone. Tuition unpaid. I packed my things into cardboard boxes and came home, though home was now my Aunt Donna's spare room in New Haven, Connecticut. I went from lattes and Uber rides to clipping coupons and sleeping under floral comforters decorated with stuffed animals that hadn't been touched since the 80s. My pride crumbled, and worse, my sense of identity went with it. Who was I without the clubs, the vacations, the polished veneer of wealth? Nobody. Just another broke 20-year-old with no degree, no connections that still mattered, and no clue how to survive. That's how I ended up at Burger King. The Burger King on Wally Avenue wasn't glamorous. It sat between a payday loan office and a failing laundromat. The parking lot was cracked, weeds pushing through like stubborn survivors. On my first day, I could feel the eyes on me. Crew members who knew I didn't belong. Too soft, too clueless, too clean. "Hey, princess, you ever flipped a burger before?" One of the guys, Jamal, asked with a smirk. I laughed it off, but the truth was I'd never worked a day in my life. Not at a grocery store, not babysitting, not even mowing lawns. The register confused me, the grill terrified me, and by my second shift, I was crying in the walk-in freezer because a customer screamed at me for forgetting his ketchup. But slowly, things shifted. I learned to keep my head down, to work doubles without complaint, to mop until my back ached. I blistered my feet, ruined my manicure, and stopped caring. The mockery faded. Some of them even started to respect me, especially Daniel. Daniel Torres was our shift lead. Ex-Army, always calm, always steady. He had a shaved head, deep brown eyes, and a voice that carried authority without needing to yell. He didn't smile much, but when he did, it was genuine. The kind of smile that made you feel like maybe you weren't completely invisible. Friday nights were our hardest shifts. We closed at midnight, but with cleaning, it was always 1 or 2 before we left. The late-night crowd was unpredictable. Drunk college kids, sketchy loners, truckers stopping through. Daniel always stacked the schedule with people he trusted. Me on grill, Kendra at register, Marcus on fries, and him floating wherever needed. That's when it happened. It was a Friday night in early March, the kind of night where the cold wind cut right through your jacket. Business had slowed, the dining room nearly empty. A single fluorescent bulb in the lobby flickered, buzzing like it might die any second. I was wiping down the prep table when the bell above the door chimed. A man walked in. He was average height, late 30s maybe, wearing a black hoodie and worn jeans. Nothing remarkable at first glance, but something about the way he moved made the hairs on my arms rise. Too deliberate, like every step was rehearsed. "Welcome to Burger King," Kendra called cheerfully from behind the register. "What can I get for you tonight?" The man looked up at the menu board, lips moving slightly as though practicing lines in his head. Then he spoke. "2 double cheeseburgers, please." "Sure thing," Kendra replied, tapping at the screen. But then he added, "Could I get those without the bun, or the bacon, or the cheese?" Kendra hesitated. "So, just the beef patties?" He nodded. "Correct. And actually, could you not grill them?" The room froze. "I'm sorry, did you say not grill them?" Kendra asked carefully. "Yes," he said evenly. "I want the raw patties. Just as they are." No heat, Kendra shot me a wide-eyed look. I stepped forward from the grill. "I'm sorry, sir," I said gently. "We can't serve raw meat." "Health code." He turned his head toward me, and for the first time I saw his eyes. Pale, cloudy, like stagnant water. They pinned me to the spot. "You've heard of steak tartare, haven't you?" he asked. "Sure," I said. "But this isn't a French restaurant. This is Burger King. We cook our burgers." His lips curled into a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Is there a manager I could speak to?" Before I could respond, Daniel appeared from the back, drying his hands on a towel. His presence alone made the air steadier. "I'm the shift lead," he said calmly, "and she's right. We can't serve raw meat." The man sighed almost theatrically. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded stack of bills. Hundreds. Crisp thick. "How much would it take?" he asked softly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus froze mid-scoop at the fry station. Kendra's jaw went slack. Daniel didn't flinch. He just said quietly, "Ellie, check the cooler." My stomach dropped. That was code. "Leave now." I nodded, ducking into the walk-in freezer. I pretended to check expiration dates, but my ears strained toward the lobby. Voices murmured, too low to catch. Then footsteps. A door squeaked. Silence again. Minutes later, Daniel entered the freezer. He shoved something into my hand. $300 bills. "This never happened," he said firmly. "You gave it to him?" I whispered, horrified. Daniel didn't answer. He just walked past me, heading toward the back door. I was left staring at the money, my pulse hammering. Something was deeply wrong. I couldn't let it go. Curiosity gnawed at me. I asked Marcus to cover the grill for 5 minutes, grabbed a cigarette from the emergency pack above the break room microwave, though I didn't, smoke, and stepped into the icy night air. The man was still there, sitting in a beat-up gray Camry, engine idling. He hadn't driven off. I watched as he unwrapped the Burger King wrapper. It was translucent with blood. He held one of the raw patties to his face, not to eat, but to smell. His eyes fluttered closed, nostrils flaring as if inhaling a fine wine. My stomach lurched. I leaned forward slightly, peering through his window. His eyes snapped open. He saw me. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then his expression changed, something between hunger and rage. He started the car, tires screeching as he tore out of the lot, grease-smeared wrapper clutched in his hand. I stumbled back, breath ragged, cigarette forgotten. "Daniel!" I burst into the back hallway, cornering him near the mop sink. That guy, he wasn't eating the meat. He was smelling it. Like it was... Enough! Daniel cut me off, grabbing my arm. His face was pale, his eyes sharper than usual. "You say nothing. Not to management, not to corporate. Nothing. You understand? But you like having a job?" His voice cracked like a whip. I nodded numbly. "Then let it go." We never saw the man again. Not directly. But strange things started happening. Late-night calls to the store. Silence on the other end. Once Marcus swore he found a blood-soaked wrapper at the drive-through window. Another time, Kendra discovered a raw patty outside the back door, half-bitten. Management brushed it off as pranks, but I knew better. 2 months later, Daniel quit. No warning, no explanation. Just gone. Management said, family emergency, but when I checked his locker, it was empty. Except for one thing, a photograph. A young woman in her 20s, smiling brightly. On the back, in hurried handwriting, she asked too many questions. I never found out who the man in the hoodie was or why he wanted raw meat. But I can tell you this, real horror isn't chainsaws or haunted houses. Real horror is quiet. It's subtle. It's a stranger asking for uncooked patties at 11:30 p.m. It's the sinking certainty that he wasn't the only one. Story 7. I never thought flipping burgers would change the way I looked at the world, but it did. Even now, 5 years later, I still double-check every corner of a room before I turn off the lights. People laugh when I tell them I got my worst scare working at Burger King, but they weren't there that night. They didn't see what I saw. Back in 2019, I was 21, broke and desperate. My name's Evan Mitchell, and I grew up in a small town outside Knoxville, Tennessee. My mom worked part-time at a nursing home. My dad was out of the picture, and I was the oldest of 3. That meant bills piled up on me quicker than I could breathe. College wasn't really on the table, not when rent was late and my little sister needed braces. Burger King wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Minimum wage plus a couple bucks extra for night shift. I'd been there almost a year, working mostly evenings from 4 p.m. to close. The place sat off Route 129, wedged between a rundown Marathon gas station and a strip mall that had more boarded-up windows than open stores. It wasn't the kind of town you'd find on a postcard, but it was home. The crew was small, and after months of working together, I knew everyone's rhythms. Marcus, the shift lead, was 26, always serious, counting every penny like it came out of his own pocket. Janelle worked the grill. Tough, quick with her hands, but soft-spoken. And then there was me, usually stuck on dining room cleanup or fries. We weren't best friends, but we got along well enough to joke about customers who wanted extra crispy ice in their drinks. That October night started out like any other. Cool air outside, faint smell of damp leaves every time the doors swung open. Halloween decorations hung half-heartedly around the lobby. Plastic pumpkins, a faded spooky specials poster, fake cobwebs strung across the windows. Business was slow. By 9:30, we hadn't seen a single car in the drive-thru for nearly an hour. Marcus was in the office doing the deposit count. Janelle was swapping fryer filters in the back. I was wiping down booths, broom leaning against my shoulder as I worked my way toward the big windows near the drink station. That's when I noticed it. At first, I thought it was just the shadow of the divider wall catching me wrong. One of those squat, outdated barriers separating booths from the drink area. But then it shifted, and I realized there was a man crouched there, folded low, arms tucked close, head bent like he was trying to melt into the wall. My blood went cold. I hadn't heard the door chime. No footsteps, no voice asking if the lobby was still open. He was just there, waiting. I dropped the rag and stepped back, my heart hammering in my throat. Hey, I stammered, my voice cracking louder than I meant. We're closed. The man didn't answer. Slowly, almost deliberately, he rose to his feet. His back was still to me. I could see his shoulders, thin, hunched under a dark hoodie, jeans so dirty they looked stiff. He was maybe 5'7", no bigger than me, but the way he stood, it felt wrong, like a cornered animal deciding whether to bolt or bite. Janelle's voice floated from the kitchen. "Evan, you good out there?" I swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the stranger. There's somebody in the lobby." Before she could respond, the man darted, not toward the door like I expected, but behind the front counter. His movements were sharp, twitchy, like he'd been holding still too long, and finally snapped. "What the hell?" Janelle's face appeared in the service window. I leaned over the counter, forcing my voice to sound stronger than I felt. "Sir, you need to get out. We're closed." That's when he finally spoke. His voice was rough, trembling. "Don't come over here. I'm warning you." The desperation in his tone rooted me to the spot. He didn't sound angry. He sounded scared. Marcus appeared from the office, clutching the night deposit bag. His eyes narrowed when he saw me frozen. "What's going on?" "There's a guy," I whispered, "behind the counter." Marcus's face drained of color. He glanced once, then muttered, "We need to go." Now Janelle didn't hesitate. She dropped the fryer tools and vanished through the back. Marcus bolted after her. My legs wanted to move, but I stayed locked for one heartbeat too long, staring at the hooded figure fiddling with the register. Then I ran, shoes squeaking on the freshly mopped tiles, lungs burning as I shoved through the back door into the cold night air. Janelle was already in her car, fumbling with her keys. Marcus jumped into his old Ford pickup, peeling out of the lot without even looking back. I stood frozen beside my Corolla, chest heaving, trying to figure out what to do. Through the front window, I could see him. He wasn't chasing us. He was pacing behind the counter, slamming buttons on the register, yanking at the drawer like an animal tearing at a cage. My phone slipped in my sweaty hand as I dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" There's a man inside our Burger King," I whispered, crouching behind my car door. "He was hiding in the dining room until we closed. Now he's behind the counter trying to open the register." "Are you inside?" "No, I'm outside. He doesn't know I'm here." The others left. "Stay on the line. Officers are on their way." Minutes crawled. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the traffic on the highway. Every time the man slammed the register, I flinched. I kept expecting him to notice me through the glass, to come bursting out the door, but he never did. 5 minutes later, flashing blue lights washed over the lot. 3 cruisers pulled in, tires crunching over loose gravel. Officers went in with guns drawn. It was over fast. 2 minutes, maybe 3, before they walked him out in cuffs. He couldn't have been more than 25. Face pale, lips trembling, eyes darting like a trapped rabbit. They pulled a screwdriver from his pocket and a knife taped under his hoodie. I learned later that he must have slipped in just before close, tucked himself behind the booth where no one checked. He waited until the doors were locked, knowing we'd eventually leave him alone with the registers. What he didn't know was that Marcus had already dropped the cash in the safe. The drawer he tried to pry open was empty. That should have been a relief, but it wasn't. For weeks after, every time I turned a corner in the store, I half expected to see someone crouched there waiting. Management told us to sweep the lobby in pairs, lock the doors earlier if it was dead. They acted like procedures could erase what happened, but I couldn't shake it. The image of him crouched low, silent, watching us go about our night while he planned to make his move. 2 months later, I quit. Told them it was for school. Truth? I couldn't look at those divider walls anymore without picturing him tucked behind one, hidden in plain sight. And that's the thing about fear. It isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, crouched low, waiting for you to notice. Story 8. I woke up that morning with a weight on my chest that I couldn't explain. Not the kind you feel after eating too much or sleeping wrong, but the kind that comes from weeks of being tired in ways sleep doesn't fix. My name's Daniel Price. I'm 23 years old, and I live in a town called Fairview, Kentucky. If you looked at Fairview on a map, you'd probably miss it. 2 gas stations, a grocery store that closes at 9, and a handful of fast food joints strung along Main Street like beads on a string. People don't come here unless they're lost or visiting family. I didn't plan on staying here myself. I graduated high school thinking I'd go to community college, maybe transfer to a bigger city. But plans don't always survive reality. My mom got sick my first semester, Bills stacked up, and before I knew it, I was shelving textbooks and dreams, replacing them with paper hats and polyester uniforms. 2 years later, I'm still here, working nights at the Burger King on the edge of town, trying not to think about how each shift feels like a brick on my back. That Monday started like any other. I dragged myself out of bed around noon. Working overnights meant I lived opposite to most of the world. When people were waking up, I was going to bed. When people were eating dinner with their families, I was standing behind a greasy counter, asking if they wanted fries with that. My apartment was small, just a one-bedroom above an old hardware store, but it was cheap and close enough to work that I could walk if my car broke down again. I shuffled into the kitchen, made coffee in the beat-up Mr. Coffee my mom had given me, and stared out the window at Main Street. The town looked peaceful in the daylight, almost pretty with the rows of oak trees turning orange for fall. But nights were different. Nights in Fairview were too quiet. As I poured myself a mug, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Claire, my co-worker and one of the few people who made this job bearable. Claire, you on tonight? Me. Yeah. Midnight to 8. You. Claire. Same. Heard the new guy quit. Manager's pissed. Going to be short-staffed. Me. Great. Can't wait. Claire. Don't die, LOL. I smiled a little. Claire always found a way to joke, even when things sucked. The day passed in its usual haze. I tried to nap around 6, but kept tossing and turning. Around 9, I made some ramen, flipped channels, and eventually gave up. By 11, I was dressed in my black Burger King polo, name tag clipped crookedly, standing in front of the bathroom mirror with that heavy feeling pressing down harder. Just another shift, I told myself. In and out. The drive to Burger King only took 10 minutes. The streets were empty, streetlights buzzing, the occasional truck rumbling past. When I pulled into the parking lot, only 3 cars sat scattered under the lamps. Claire's old Honda Civic, our manager Rick's pickup, and a rusted sedan that I didn't recognize. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, the smell of fryer oil clinging to everything. Claire waved from behind the counter. She had her brown hair tied back and her sleeves rolled up, already wiping down the soda machine. "Hey, stranger," she said. "Ready for hell?" "As ready as I'll ever be." I clocked in, the machine beeping cheerlessly. Rick popped his head out of the office. He was a stocky guy in his 40s, always sweating, always irritated. "We're short tonight," he barked. "Keep your brakes quick." "I don't want to see anyone slacking." "Got it," Claire muttered under her breath. For the first couple of hours, it was quiet. A few drive-through orders, mostly truckers passing through. Claire and I killed time by folding wrappers into little paper footballs, sliding them back and forth across the counter. Rick sat in the office pretending to do paperwork, but probably watching YouTube on his phone. Around 2 a.m., the quiet started to feel heavy, the kind that makes you notice every hum of the refrigerator, every squeak of your shoes. I was wiping down trays when the door chimed. A man walked in. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with a gray hoodie pulled up even though it wasn't cold inside. His jeans were clean, his sneakers too. Not a drifter, not exactly local either. He walked slow, scanning the place with sharp eyes before settling on the counter. "Evening," I said, trying to sound normal. "What can I get for you?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared. His eyes were pale blue, the kind that catch light in strange ways. Finally, he said, "Whopper. No onions." "Sure thing." I tapped it in. "Anything else?" "Large Coke." "All right, that'll be $7.45. He pulled a crumpled bill from his pocket and slid it across. His hands were clean, but his nails were short, almost bitten down. I gave him his change, and he didn't move, just stood there watching me while I filled his cup. Something about the way he stared made my skin crawl. When I slid the Coke across, he leaned closer. "You work here every night?" Most nights, yeah." He smiled. Not friendly. More like he was testing how it looked on his face. "Must get lonely." I forced a laugh. "Keeps me busy." He didn't say anything else. Just walked to the corner booth, sat with his back to the wall, and sipped his drink slowly, eyes flicking between me and the empty parking lot outside. Claire leaned close and whispered, "Creepy much?" Yeah, I muttered. Hope he eats quick. But he didn't. He sat there long after finishing his burger, just sipping the Coke, staring. Every so often, he'd glance at the door like he was waiting for someone. My nerves tightened. Something about him didn't feel right. Around 3 a.m., I stepped outside to toss a bag of trash. The lot was empty except for that rusted sedan I'd noticed earlier, parked under the far light. My heart skipped when I saw movement inside. A shape, sitting in the driver's seat, watching. I froze. The man inside Burger King, the car outside. I hurried back in, locking the side door behind me. Everything okay? Claire asked, raising an eyebrow. Car out there? I said quietly. Someone's sitting in it. Before she could answer, the man in the hoodie stood up. He left his empty cup on the table and walked slowly toward the counter. My throat tightened. Need something else? I asked, voice a little shaky. He looked at me, then at Claire, then back at me. Bathroom? I pointed. Down the hall on the left. He walked past us, his shoes squeaking on the tiles. As soon as he disappeared, Claire whispered, Dan, I don't like this. Me neither. Minutes ticked by. He didn't come back. I glanced toward the hall. The bathroom door was half open, empty. Where the hell did he go? Claire muttered. Before I could answer, we heard it. The faint click of the back door. The employee's exit. He went outside, I said. Rick finally looked up from the office, annoyed. What's going on? Guy just slipped out the back, I told him. Rick groaned. Probably just stepped out to smoke. But I wasn't so sure. I walked to the window, peering out into the lot. The rusted sedan's headlights flicked on. The figure inside stepped out. Another man, shorter, stockier. He and the hoodie guy stood together, talking. My stomach dropped. Claire, I whispered, call the cops. What do I tell them? She asked, panicked. Tell them 2 guys are casing the place. As she dialed, the hoodie man turned his head sharply. His eyes locked on me through the glass. And he smiled again, slow, deliberate. Then he pulled something from his pocket. Metal glinted under the light. Rick, I shouted, lock the doors now. Everything happened fast after that. The 2 men moved toward the entrance, one pulling on the handle while the other circled toward the drive-thru window. Claire was on the phone, voice shaking as she gave our address. Rick cursed, fumbling with the keys to lock the doors. The handle rattled violently. Fists banged against the glass. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out everything else. They're coming in, Claire cried. Rick grabbed a broom like it would do anything. The banging grew louder, the glass starting to crack. I backed up, pulse racing, staring at the thin barrier between us and them. Then, sirens. Red and blue lights flashed across the lot. The 2 men bolted, sprinting toward the rusted sedan. Doors slammed, tires squealed, and they tore out onto Main Street as 2 cruisers pulled in. I nearly collapsed with relief. The officers stormed in, took our statements, walked the lot with flashlights. They didn't catch the men, but they promised to patrol the area. By the time the sun came up, I was still shaking. The sight of those pale blue eyes, that smile, the sound of fists against glass, I knew I'd never forget it. I quit Burger King a week later. Claire transferred to another town. Rick stayed, but even he started closing earlier when he could. Now, whenever I drive past that Burger King on Main Street, I see the booth in the corner, the empty Coke cup, and I wonder what would have happened if the sirens had come just a minute later.